I embrace digital distribution. Pretty much from video games to movies to music, all my stuff is digital.
I much prefer physical. I like actually owning something as opposed to just owning the license to play a game.
I have a lot of my old games that I just can't give up because it's nostalgic, but for the most part I don't bother with them anymore.
I like physical copies, something you can hold, you can bring to your friend's house.
But the collection side of things loses a bit of appeal. It's one thing to download 1,000 games, it's another thing to try to get some retro collection.
Just having physical media just means something, because now this is the whole game experience and I can move around with it. It's tactile, it's real.
At some point, digital distribution will be the model by and large.
Digital distribution is great for more obscure titles. They can get cheaper. It's good for sales and things like that. But they're very ethereal, very fleeting.
With digital media, they could take it away and just like that.
I can still pick up old games and play them now. If they were saved on hard drives, they would be just gone.
I like having a physical copy. There's just something less personal about downloading a game.
Physical items have a personal connection with people. A lot of my games growing up were given to me from my family because we couldn't afford games. But every one of those cards, every one of those physical gray cards that barely worked, I still have them because they're my memories in physical form. And that's something that you don't get that anymore. You do not get that anymore.
Obviously, there's a lot to say about digital distribution versus physical media, and the discussion isn't likely to end anytime soon. Many people do have a hardline stance against buying digital-only releases, which prevents them from discovering a lot of unique games from smaller independent teams. But a two-man publishing operation just outside of Raleigh, North Carolina is helping reconcile indie games with physical media. The year was 2010. Josh Fairhurst, a recent graduate from North Carolina State University with a degree in computer science, had just spent the last several months working crunch on Gears of War 2 for Epic Games. A longtime gamer and collector, he was ready to do things his own way.
Fresh out of college, I found some funding, thankfully, because there was this weird incubator program starting that was recklessly giving indie developers money. I pitched them an idea and they gave us 20 grand to start our company.
Josh and a few friends started Mighty Rabbit Studios in Cary, near Raleigh, the heart of North Carolina game development.
I'm Josh Fairhurst and this is Mighty Rabbit Studios.
Surrounded by the retro games they loved and were inspired by, they began development on Saturday Morning RPG for PC, Mac, and mobile. In an effort to make the best game that they could, they turned to Kickstarter where they raised over $10,000.
Saturday Morning RPG is an episodic role-playing game that is firmly set in a world inspired by 1980s Saturday morning cartoons and pop culture.
Released in 2013 for PC, Mac, iOS, and Android, Saturday Morning RPG would also feature an original soundtrack by Vince DiCola, who composed the iconic Transformers the Movie soundtrack.
We had reviewed well, we got so much press coverage. We thought the game was going to do insanely well. It didn't.
Despite losing one of its co-founders, Josh began to look for other opportunities to keep Mighty Rabbit afloat. An opportunity arose when they landed some contract work to create a demo for a mobile game called Breach and Clear. This turn-based military strategy game puts the player in control of a special forces unit as they face a variety of high-stress, real-world tactical situations. Determined to make an impression, Josh and his team ultimately built the full Breach and Clear game for the same amount that they negotiated for the demo. Breach and Clear was released on mobile platforms in 2013.
We went above and beyond to do it, to continue to thrive, stay in business, do good work for them, Game ended up being really successful. Breach and Clear was the #1 strategy game in, I think, like 40 different countries on the iOS App Store when it came out. It actually made it to like the #2 top app in the App Store in the United States, which was insane.
Bolstered by this success, Mighty Rabbit set about porting Breach and Clear to the PlayStation Vita while also developing Fat Chicken, a sort of reverse tower defense game for PC, Mac, and mobile. It wasn't long before Mighty Rabbit began development on Breach and Clear Deadline for PC, Mac, and Linux. Released in 2015, this spin-off dropped much of the realism of the original and threw the player into the zombie apocalypse. Despite being more approachable, Breach and Clear Deadline was plagued with a more difficult development and wouldn't end up enjoying the same success. To add insult to injury, the Vita port of the first game only sold around 2,000 copies on the PlayStation Network.
We were left with no work, no money, and we were about to have to close our doors. We were about 1 month out from closing our doors. And I had to think, like, what can we do? What crazy thing can we do right now to keep making money and to stay in business?
This is Retro City Rampage, an overhead, open-world game in an 8-bit style. It was developed solely by Brian Provinciano over the course of 5 years for a number of platforms, where it was sold as a digital download-only game. Garnering several awards and massive sales, Provinciano produced an update, Retro City Rampage DX, which added a ton of content, but this time, his eyes were set beyond the download-only realm. Brian Provinciano had gone to Sony and worked out all the details so that he could self-publish 2,000 copies of Retro City Rampage DX on actual PlayStation 4 Blu-ray discs, and later on cartridge for the PlayStation Vita. To help with shipping, Provinciano enlisted the services of Fangamer, a popular purveyor of custom video game goods. These went on sale for $25 on November 10th, 2014. They sold out immediately.
But I had this early inclination that Fangamer was going to go to their other clients, like Young Horses with Octodad, and put out other physical games after that was so wildly successful. I thought, this is the next step for Fangamer. They're going to do this. But then, like, a year had passed. They had put nothing else out. And it turns out it was because Brian Provinciano at VBlank had put all the effort forth.
This gave Fairhurst an idea. If he could take advantage of the groundwork laid by Provinciano and tap into the same flurry of excitement, then Mighty Rabbit might just have a chance.
I'm doing a Hail Mary. I'm printing 1,500 copies of Breach and Clear on cartridge for PlayStation Vita with the last money that we have. I didn't know if it was going to do well. I didn't know if it was going to sell out or if people would care, because honestly, the game hadn't sold very well on Vita.
Breach and Clear was published under the moniker Limited Run and etched with the number 1, which symbolized it as being their first release. The plan was to put them up for sale online exclusively through limitedrungames.com. But there was one catch. How do you drum up enough interest in a product like this without backing from a major player like Fangamer? Giving one copy to a close friend who just happened to be an industry vet proved to be just the catalyst that they were looking for.
Gave a copy to our good friend Randy Greenback, and he didn't ask if he could tweet about it. He just kind of like got it and took a picture of it with the limited run sticker next to it, and it exploded. Collectors immediately honed in on it. We're like, this is awesome, I gotta get in on this.
On October 29th, 2015, the first batch of Breach and Clear went on sale. To say it was a success was an understatement.
I think it was like 108 minutes was the total time it took to sell out of all of our stock. So it was like, right then we knew, this is big.
The gamble had paid off, and with that, Limited Run Games was in business, and Mighty Rabbit Studios back in the black. But the real question was, what's the next step? The Mighty Rabbit developed Saturday Morning RPG was the obvious candidate for a physical release, this time on the Vita and the PlayStation 4.
I wanted to have my games, first and foremost, the games that I developed at Mighty Rabbit, on discs and cartridges so they'd have a legacy. As somebody who grew up with physical media, that's always been something I've wanted. Ever since I was a kid, I've wanted a game I made to be on a disc in a box, like a real thing. Like, it kind of legitimizes your work.
On January 29th, 2016, limited runs sold through all 1,980 copies on PlayStation 4 and 2,500 copies on the PlayStation Vita, cementing that there was definitely a market for this, and that Fairhurst was at the epicenter.
Just from having that insight as a game collector and a developer, I knew there was so many different reasons why this had to exist, why this had to be a thing. And I just didn't think anybody else was realizing that or noticing that, because the popular belief is that physical media is dead.
With 2 of Mighty Rabbit's releases available physically, it was time to expand Limited Run's scope and entice other developers. This is where Limited Run's co-founder would shine, one of Josh's closest childhood friends.
I met Josh in March of 2000 because we both were big fans of Gundam Wing, and we had the same science class together. We were the 2 friends, like when your groups start to spread apart, we always stayed together.
Douglas Bogart and Josh forged a bond of friendship through talking video games, writing bad Gundam fan fiction, hundreds of hours of Phantasy Star Online, and playing music. Their band name, Agito Plus 9, being an homage to the game that they love so much.
He started heading into video games when we got a little older, and I was still trying to do music. Eventually I wasn't going to be able to make it musically because he had already come to that conclusion way back in the day and I was more stubborn. He started including me more on some of the video game stuff and working as like a part-time tester, and then it just kind of got to that point where eventually he had me co-found Limited Run with him, and it kind of took off from there.
Douglas stepped into the role of Limited Run's PR and community manager with ease. It was up to him to approach the developers whose games that Limited Run was eager to publish.
Because I played in bands back in the day, it was really easy for me to go out in public and talk to people. And once we get that conversation going, I hand it off to Josh, so he handles all the business stuff and like the actual nitty-gritty work.
Honestly, your first physical release is a lot of work because you have to meet so many people at Sony, you have to learn so many new websites. It's kind of a hurdle for developers to get past, to do.
We were developing games first, so we already understood the market.
I'm learning how to do this. I might as well approach other developers to do it for them because I've already put in the effort to learn it, and they're not going to want to put in that effort. And the other thing, they're not going to want to put the money down to risk putting one of these things out.
Us having the solution saying, hey, we can give you a physical copy without putting you in a financial situation where you're broke because you had to overproduce.
I will do all the work with Sony and make it just as easy as making your game compatible with the format, which is just a couple hours of work. And I figured that's a no-brainer.
Josh was right. It didn't take long for word to spread about what Limited Run was doing. Having physical, permanent copies of their games was something that several developers were interested in. While most deals were still being worked through, it would be one of the most iconic developers of the 32-bit generation that would end up being the first to sign on. Oddworld New and Tasty was a remake of the PlayStation 1 bestseller that was released on several platforms, including the PlayStation 4 and Vita. Oddworld inhabitants would reach out to Limited Run and express interest.
They contacted us about doing it because they liked what we were doing, and we had generated a lot of good press, and we were growing extremely fast.
On April 24th, 2016, 5,000 copies of the PS4 version and 2,500 copies of the Vita version went up for sale on Limited Run's website. The release would include all patches and downloadable content on disc, a practice that Limited Run tried to make a habit of, preserving the complete game for the future.
We were big fans. I had played it on PlayStation, so did Josh. It was just like, wow, I can't believe this is the first game we're doing that's third party.
Although this was a larger print run than they'd ever done, the popularity of the series warranted the increased numbers. It didn't stop the game from selling through almost immediately.
Oddworld is kind of like, it's a legendary name. And this just showed everybody we can handle big properties.
I'm sure you're familiar with the free games that PlayStation Plus members get to download each month. They come from a variety of developers and publishers, but mostly they're from the indie scene. Still, of the hundreds of free games available, I've put real time and effort into only one. There's just something about buying a game, not to mention the deliberate act of putting it in a system, that makes me care about it more than just getting a digital download for free. If I pay for it, I am gonna play it. And unfortunately, as long as you're a PS Plus subscriber, Sony won't even let you buy PS Plus freebies for you to hold on to for later. Limited Run's fourth release was FUTURIOTUM EP DELUXE, a puzzle/shooter that was developed by Mixed Bag. It was originally released for free for PlayStation Plus subscribers.
So that was another worry of ours, like saying these people already have this game, like maybe they don't want it again.
I have this strong belief that if somebody gets a game as for free, they have a lot less attachment to it than if they pay for it. When you pay for a game, you take the time to play it, you give it an honest chance. If you get a free game, you might play it for a minute and then just give up on it. It was free, who cares?
But it turns out people with PlayStation Plus wanted the physical because now they can keep the physical sealed and just play the game they already had through PlayStation Plus.
On May 9th, 2016, Futuriotum EP Deluxe was released on Limited Run's site. Available for both PS4 and Vita with a print run of just 2,000 copies per platform.
Mixed Bag was really happy with us. I had developers from Italy come up to me while I was eating lunch at E3 saying, hey, you worked with Mixed Bag, we're really good friends with them, and like, I'd love to work with you.
With another successful sellout on the books, Josh and Douglas began to pursue some of their most wanted games.
When we started the company, we made a dream list on Google Drive, like saying, these are the companies we want to go after, and like, if we could get these, that would be amazing. Octodad's been on there since day one, and like, we never really tried, so I just kind of like one day I was like, screw it, I'm just going to email them and see what happens.
The answer was yes, and Young Horse's Octodad was released by Limited Run on June 19th, 2016, with 4,500 copies for the PS4 and 3,500 for the Vita. Also on tap was a special Dad Edition bundle that included a game-themed tie-in produced by Fangamer.
It took a little longer to sell out just because at the time we were riding a little high after Oddworld, so we signed a bigger release, but it still sold out within 2 days.
We've got this weird thing though, where if a game stays in stock for more than 24 hours, we start getting a deluge of emails from people asking us to cancel their orders. Because it's not rare anymore if it's in stock for 24 hours or more. But then when it sells out, we'll respond to them like, oh, never mind, I don't want to cancel it anymore.
Up to this point, Limited Run had only been releasing one game per month. This made sense when they were first starting, but as word of mouth and popularity increased, they had to figure something out.
We have so many developers coming to us with awesome games that we don't want to say no. Because I want to preserve these games, I want these games on my shelf, I'm not going to turn them away.
The solution sounds simple in theory, just release more than one game per month. In July 2016, 2 titles, or 3 if you count multi-platform versions, would hit simultaneously on the 4th of July. The first of the titles, Xeodrifter from Renegade Kid, would see release on both the PS4 and the Vita, numbered at 2,300 copies per platform.
What's crazy is that Jules Watson from Renegade Kid actually like called me on the phone, like sent me an email, called me on the phone, talked to me like before we had even put Breach and Clear on sale, because he wanted to kind of investigate what we were doing because he's a big fan of physical media.
Xeodrifter looks and feels a lot like another Renegade Kid release, Mutant Mudds, which is one of the most popular games on the Nintendo eShop. So why not release it on that platform when a large chunk of the developer's fan base is there? And for that matter, why are all of the releases thus far only for Sony platforms?
So the big thing that Sony is allowing us to do that's kind of keeping us on Sony platforms right now is really low minimum order quantities. Sometimes they're letting us pay a very small fee to break their minimum order quantities and go below the minimum order quantities.
Microsoft, I feel like we could work with more so than Nintendo right now.
Microsoft is mired in paperwork and bureaucracy and money.
Nintendo is just kind of hard to work with at the moment when you're an indie company.
We're going to try to break onto those platforms. We're going to do what we can, but there's only so much we can do if they don't want to go below those minimum order quantities.
The second release of the day was Lost Sea, an overhead hack and slash with procedurally generated levels. This was to be the first entry in a multi-game deal with Hong Kong-based developer East Asia Soft, limited to 3,000 copies.
East Asia Soft put a lot of work into the packaging. They made manuals for the games.
But one thing absent from Lost Sea is also missing from all limited run releases. Something so subtle that you might not even notice. Where's the ESRB rating?
Games do not have to display them. It's a retailer requirement. It's GameStop saying, we have to have this rating on there because we don't want a parent to come in and buy a game and sue us when it's not appropriate for her kid. but we're selling direct to customer.
Talk about an underappreciated platform. The PlayStation Vita will go down in history as a disappointment for Sony, but for its fans, it will be one of the greatest missed opportunities. Now, have you noticed just how well Limited Run has supported the system? Nearly every game that they put out, if a version for the Vita exists, they made sure it gets a physical release. By the time they reach the end of their current release schedule, Limited Run Games may very well be the #1 publisher on the system. Crazy, right?
Vita fans are craving games because everybody says it's dead and AAA companies aren't supporting it. So any release you do for a Vita is like, it's gold to Vita fans. And it also shows that there's way more Vita fans than people are giving credit for.
Josh and Douglas would find this out firsthand when the second game in the East Asia Soft deal was released on July 29, 2016. Soldner X2 Final Prototype had Vita fans going crazy. Limited to just 3,200 copies, it's an amazing side-scrolling shooter with a great soundtrack. It's possible that demand was just a little bit underestimated. A perfect storm of hardcore Vita fans and Limited Run's increasing popularity, Soldner sold out so quickly that many buyers never even had a chance to get their order in. It didn't take long for the internet to make its ire known with claims of making things difficult for the non-collector. Limited Run does their best to give everyone a chance, with each release having 2 windows of sale. Half of the copies are available at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and the second at 6 p.m. When it comes to the number of total available copies, it becomes a balancing act. Produce too few copies and buyers might get angry because they couldn't get it quick enough, but produce too many copies and they might not sell out at all. So they try their best to grow availability with their sales numbers.
We can probably put out a game with 3,000 copies, 3,200 like Soldner, and let people buy 2. And that will probably sell in about 24 hours. That's my prediction for how long that's going to last, because we actually looked at data, we looked at all of our past purchases, and we said this is where that should be.
Well, the data isn't going to match up every single time, as turned out to be the case with Soldner, but the lessons learned will be felt in the future.
It's always funny to me when people say, like, why don't you do more copies? And other people will defend us saying their game's Limited Run.
So as our customer base grows, you'll see those smaller runs expand. Now, instead of being 2,300 copies like Xeodrifter, it can be 3,500. So that's like our focus right now, is growing our following so that we can kind of get bigger runs and facilitate them.
We tell everybody, like, the rights revert back to the developer. They could do more prints with somebody else if they want to, so it's up to them. It's just, with us, it's 1 print and that's it.
Released alongside Soldner was Breaching Clear Deadline. Think about it, a game whose release had pretty much killed Mighty Rabbit was now getting a physical release on the PlayStation 4 that was limited to 3,000 copies.
It's a complete remaster of what we did on the PC version, and again, we chose that game just because it's ours, so, like, not to be biased, but any games we make will probably have a limited run for it.
Josh Fairhurst, Douglas Bogart, Mighty Rabbit Studios, and Limited Run Games had come full circle. Beyond Breaching Clear Deadline, we've already seen the release of several additional titles, one of which is their most high-profile release since Oddworld. Shadow Complex Remastered is a re-release of one of the more popular digital-only games from the previous generation. All 6,000 available copies sold through in under 48 hours. At this point, we can't help but wonder what the future holds for Limited Run. Competitors have started to pop up, but Josh and Douglas already have a number of high-profile titles in various stages of the process. Some announced, others a complete mystery. And while we won't know what those games are until they're announced, our minds can't help but run a little wild with possibilities and wishful thinking. But what about the game that Josh and Douglas dream of being able to release? The answer might be more obvious than you think.
And I guess, like, biggest dream game, which would make no sense for me ever to do, would be Phantasy Star Online 2.
Phantasy Star Online 2. If I could make that happen and have it be in English, that's my dream game right there.
We want to thank Josh and Douglas at Limited Run for allowing us to come over and spend the day with them. But most of all, we want to thank them for providing people with the opportunity to buy physical copies of the games we love and want to continue to enjoy into the future. It's good to see people who care about the medium the way we do Fight for preserving a game long after the final server has been shut down.
I've been collecting games my whole life. For as long as I can remember. Every Nintendo game I've bought, I've kept. And it's really important to me to have game collecting in my life, to have games on a cartridge or on a disc or whatever. I can tell you a story about almost any physical game you pull out. I remember buying it at the store. I remember taking it home. I remember ripping the wrap off. I remember some significant event in my life that was happening when I got that game.
And now people are starting to miss the idea of having these boxes. They wanted to like proudly display, like, look, this is a game I spent, I don't know, 100 hours in. Like, I want this on my shelf to show people that, because showing people in my Steam library isn't necessarily as cool as saying, like, here's the box for the game.
If your game is just this digital thing that is going to be pretty hard to play in 20 years, who's going to be talking about it? When you have a working PlayStation 4 in 20 years, that game is still going to work in it. So collectors are always going to remember these things that we're putting out. There's a legacy.